How does Superman deal with society's money ills? Well, in Action Comics number 1093, we see that it's largely the way you would hope he would. He is Superman, after all. So this is the latest issue of the Mark Waid and Skylar Patridge run on Action Comics. Takes a look back at Clark Kent's days as Superboy in Smallville. And in this issue, a corrupt banker type forecloses on a bunch of farms in Smallville, and Superboy has to respond. It's always kind of interesting when superhero comics deal with practical issues like money, especially a character like Superman who's so ethics-centric. You know, one of my favorite Superman moments that I've ever seen was actually done in an issue of Nightwing back in, I think, the late 90s, early 2000s. Chuck Dixon wrote it. A banker type is coming to foreclose on an apartment complex in Bloodhaven, and Nightwing and Superman investigate, and Superman just kind of lets out a burst of super breath and blows all the documentation and forms away. So in the spirit of fighting for the common man and like the underdog, so to speak, he's able to kind of cheat the system without actually cheating, if that makes sense. He does that same kind of thing in this issue, which I think is why I really like it. It's actually my favorite Action Comics issue that Waid and Patridge have put together so far. It's some very nice character work in terms of Clark Kent, Superboy, Superman, and how he came to believe the things that he believes as an adult. And of course, all this is very true to the way Superman was originally written in the 30s. You know, he was a fighter for the common man and the oppressed. And on top of everything else, I continue to be a fan of Skylar Patridge's sort of update to the Superboy look. Even Superman loves him a pair of Chuck Taylors. In Ferocious number 2, we see a dynamic that kind of puts a different spin on Till Death Do Us Part. I'll explain. So yeah, we're still very much playing catch-up from December because of the Baldy Awards. And one of the books that I wanted to make sure that I did not lose touch with here was Ferocious from Mad Cave Studios. This book is about like a draconic devil demon type warrior woman who is saved during a battle by a young boy and then proceeds to go slaughter the boy's entire village, destroy his life, etc. But then in order to enact his revenge on this warrior woman, the boy, Ren is what he's called, becomes her apprentice, and he's being trained by her so that he can eventually kill her, and she knows this, and it's a weird kind of twist on the lone wolf and cub dynamic. I really like it though, and this issue does a great job of showing to us how that dynamic works and how it's sustainable, you know, how it just doesn't implode. Our penciler here, Emmanuel Ercolani, also does a fine job of injecting a little bit of humanity and vulnerability into this demon warrior woman character, but not too much. It's an interesting balance that not only the two characters are finding here, but that character is finding. And of course, Andy Clark's covers here are amazing. That first cover in particular really sold this story and this idea to me. My understanding is that Ferocious is going to go 5 issues, but you know, this issue does such a nice job of giving the book a strong foundation, you know, and so much great intrigue. They could have gone 6 issues, maybe even 8, 10, 12. I mean, it's a very meaty concept, and I'm really curious to see how it fleshes out going forward. So this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder book, issue 4 of which just came out today, has kind of quietly been hitting home runs these past few months. There's a lot of Ninja Turtle stuff coming out right now, but this, I think, is my favorite, to the point that it was at the top of my stack this week. So in this issue, Shredder is still pursuing a rogue, murderous foot ninja, and he's climbing up an Arctic mountain to retrieve a precious artifact, basically. I like the look and the aura of Shredder in the snow. I think that's a nice juxtaposition that our artistic team executed really well. You know, I think my only big critique of this book thus far has been that I don't like the more armored look for Shredder. Like, I think he looks kind of robotic with the red eyes. But in an Arctic setting, that look actually works, so it's to the book's advantage here. On the subject of Shredder's look, I really like this cover, and that it illustrates that the Shredder helmet is sometimes made of mesh, so it's not always, hard like Darth Vader's helmet. It's something else to separate Shredder from Darth Vader. And our author, Dan Waters, uses this issue to inject some nice depth and humanity into the Shredder character, which I think is one of the things you want to do in a spotlight book like this when you're focusing on a villain. So yeah, I don't know how long this book is going to go, but it's got a lot of momentum right now as far as I'm concerned, and I think Ninja Turtle fans should make a point to go read it. So as I was reading Absolute Superman number 15, I realized something. The sunstone dust cloud that surrounds and envelops Superman in this book and kind of acts as his cape is kind of growing on me. It took 15 issues for that to happen, but there's something to be said for perseverance, I guess. So in this issue, we see how Kal-El has kind of settled into his new life in Smallville, Kansas, and we see what he does kind of on a day-to-day basis as Superman, as we set the table for the next story here. I was actually really excited for this issue as Juan Ferreira jumps on as artist and colorist. He quite recently worked with our author here, Jason Aaron, on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles over at IDW Publishing. And honestly, he produced some of the best Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles art that I've ever seen, so I was really curious to see what he'd bring to the table for Absolute Superman, and he's off to a fine start here. And he delivers some really cool visuals here, including a big shot inside Kal-El's barn in Smallville. I won't spoil what exactly it is, but one of my favorite parts of the issue. The scope of this story is nice and big, suitably big for a Superman story. We go all over the United States during this issue, but we also go to Pakistan to spend some time with Ra's al Ghul. We kind of have a double cliffhanger at the end of this issue, and the Superman side of that was really interesting to me. He meets a character that was really the most interesting part of the Absolute Evil one-shot that we got a little while ago. So between that and Juan Ferreira's art, I'm really interested to see what Absolute Superman brings us in 2026. Star Wars Han Solo Hunt for the Falcon number 5 wraps up what I think is one of the more interesting and really character-driven Star Wars comic books that we've seen in quite some time. I highly recommend it. It is missing something, though, and I'm going to tell you what that is. So this issue wraps up a story of Han Solo and Chewbacca matching up against Unkar Plutt in their quest to get back the lost Millennium Falcon. Our author here, Rodney Barnes, does a tremendous job establishing Han Solo's motivation, what the Millennium Falcon means to him, why it's so important to him. This is really Han Solo's midlife crisis to an extent, and that's okay because it feels natural and real. Ramon Rosanas also does a tremendous job with the art here. I think I've previously put over how he draws Han Solo himself. My big complaint with this story, maybe my only complaint, is that we never flash back to see how and when the Millennium Falcon was stolen. How that happened, what Han Solo's reaction was to it at the time. That's a big background detail that's missing here. I'm assuming that that's a Lucasfilm issue, not anybody on the Marvel side of things wanting to leave that out for whatever reason. I'm a little unsure why Lucasfilm would want to hold that back, though. I mean, the sequel trilogy is over, and, I don't think they're going to go back to that moment in like a TV show or a movie or anything, so why not just show it to us? Still, Hunt for the Falcon is effective without it. A very nice table setter for The Force Awakens, which I would recommend to anybody who is interested in Star Wars canon and Star Wars comics. The Shredder returns in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Battle Nexus number 2. But not just any Shredder, the OG Shredder. So to reiterate, in this Battle Nexus story, the Ninja Turtles are participating in an interdimensional, multiversal tournament where you can pull any character from across Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles lore and match them up against the Turtles of the IDW universe. And for this first fight, it's Leonardo matching up against the original Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird version of Shredder. Basically what that means is that this is the version of Shredder that appeared in the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic book back in 1984, and all the various appearances that he had under Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird in that continuity. This is the original incarnation of the character. The fight itself goes pretty well. I like the black and white effect. That's pretty cool. And hey, they don't job him out immediately, so I appreciated that. Nice pencil work here by Ben Bishop. I've always enjoyed his take on the Turtles. There's a really cool cliffhanger at the end of this issue with Raphael about to confront a character that I don't think we've seen in a while. So I'm very interested to see what happens there. You know what I appreciate about this Battle Nexus book compared to the DC KO stuff that DC is doing right now, like with their own fighting tournament? No stupid video game stuff. Like, the DC KO stuff has a really forced video game motif to it that I don't like. Battle Nexus doesn't have that.